Hello, Leo listeners. Cara here from Leo Listening, where I help adventurous expats and intrepid travelers improve their English listening skills. So I'm here today with a special guest, Angel Prétot, who is a holistic French learning coach at frenchfluency.net, where he helps mostly English speakers learn French with a holistic approach where he takes into account mindset, strategies, habits, and personal goals of the students. So when people learn with Angel in the French Fluency Accelerator, for example, they have their own personal journey where they pursue their goals, and at the same time they're in touch with other students who are pursuing their own goals and facing the same kinds of challenges. So the good news is, even if you're not learning French, you can apply these holistic techniques to learning any language and even other areas of life, and that's why it's holistic, if I've understood well. So, Angel, do you want to maybe add to that introduction and just tell us a bit more about yourself?
Absolutely. Thank you, Cara. That was an amazing introduction. I think you pretty much covered it. I'm a French learning coach. I'm originally from Dijon, France, but I've been living abroad in German-speaking countries actually for 10 years. I now live in Vienna in Austria. So I also know what that is to be an expat and to be in a culture that's different and to learn a new language like that, because of course I learned German. I do speak a couple more languages, 6 in total. So that's French is my native language, English, Spanish, Portuguese, German, and Esperanto. And I'm also an absolutely huge self-development junkie or personal development junkie or fan or enthusiast, call that what you want. But I'm very obsessed with optimization and just making things happen in the way that we want them to happen, or like as close as it gets to a personal goal that we can define. So I speak a lot on my channel about intentionality in learning French or in life in general, and on everything you can do to optimize your journey as a language learner. For example, I speak a lot about the 80-20 principle, which says that 20% of your efforts give 80% of your results. So that's the kind of thing you can find on my channel and in my programs if you join one of my programs.
Okay, awesome. I also like to talk about those kinds of concepts, and we'll come on to that in a second. My first question before we get there is, how did you become a holistic French learning coach? Because, you know, when you're at school, you don't really hear that as a career option, do you? You hear like you can become a French teacher in a high school or something, but not like something cool like a coach.
Well, that was my first clue. I actually have a master's degree as a French teacher. I don't have any particular specification for being a coach. In fact, I basically made that profession up.
Okay.
So when I started being a French coach, there was a couple of English coaches, but no French coach. I was the first that I knew of, or that I was able to find on Google. And I only recently added the word holistic. It's not even really part of my job title. I just call myself the French learning coach. But now we're starting to have many more coaches. I think it's really cool because people are starting to understand that you can't, as I often say, you can't really teach a language. You can only learn it. You can only help someone learn a language. You can't force the words into someone's head if they don't want to. So the way I see the language learning journey with a coach is more as the student has their goals and the coach helps them reach their goals through their own capacities, rather than seeing the student as a blank page on which the teacher should write things, because that's not what a student is. I once heard this definition of a coach, which I really loved, is that a coach is a vehicle. So it's also a vehicle, right? The coach is like a bus. But if you want to go somewhere and you really want to go there and you have your like goals clearly defined, you probably will get there eventually. But if you go there with a coach, you will go much faster because the coach is a vehicle.
Okay. All right. I see. That's really interesting, I think, when applied to languages, because I think language learning is something that, like you say, like, you know, you teach, well, we know this from teaching people, you teach people things and they don't seem to be absorbed, or the sort of link between input and output is very kind of unclear, and really a lot of it is about time and perseverance and finding the way that works for you. So I think in that sense, it does make sense to be coached. And I think a lot of language teachers are moving in that direction.
Yes, definitely.
Because I'm participating in a summit this week about online language teachers, and a lot of people are saying that they're coaches or they've done some kind of coaching certification. And I think it totally makes sense for language learning because all the facts are out there. There's grammar books, there's textbooks, the information is there, but actually like having someone to accompany you on the journey and make sure you're doing the work and keep you accountable, that's, you know, I think that's the whole point of having
it just works better this way. And I would add that also a very important thing is intentionality. And that's in traditional learning, classroom approach, things like that, and even in apps, it's almost never taken into account. Like people will go, okay, I would like to learn French, so they download an app or they sign up for a class. But nowhere in the app or in the class do they ask them, okay, why are you learning French? What do you want to do with those skills? And I do find that some people come to me even after years of practicing. Like I recently had a person come to me after some years of practicing 1 hour per day French and not having any visible results. Not that he hasn't learned things, he knows things, but he can't speak. And that's not the only one. I'm just thinking because I had him recently, but that happens on and on, that people just sometimes put a lot of time and effort and seemingly don't get anything out of it because their brain doesn't even understand what's the deal, like what is the point of learning that. It doesn't even mean that they haven't learned it. They might have learned it. Sometimes those people, when I start coaching them, they can make progress really, really fast because everything is actually in their heads, but they just don't know how to put it together to have the communication that they want to have because that wasn't their intention from the start, if that makes sense. So it's really important to know from the start where you are going because you will get there so much faster.
Okay, that's a really good point. Yeah, I wanted to ask you more about this idea of intentionality because I think, the problem with an app is like it kind of teaches you random sentences so you start getting your foundation in place. And I think this is a bit like school as well.
Yes.
Like people are quite negative about school, but at the very least, like when people come to me and they've learned English at school, it does give them a foundation. Like they can put a sentence together more or less and you know, they have something that we can work with, but it's just that the output side, they maybe, like you say, never quite knew what they wanted to do with it, or it's all a bit theoretical. So I see what you mean. And does this relate to like something that annoys me is sort of like people always asking like, what should I listen to, or what should I read, or what's the best thing for this or the best thing for that? And I'm guessing that if you're intentional about your learning, you wouldn't ask those questions because you would know what resource to choose. Does that make sense?
Yes and no. I find that because I mean, obviously you work with people who have English as a second language, so they have definitely a different approach than people who are English native speakers. What happens often with English native speakers is that they get to a certain age, and by that I mean adult, and whether they're in their 20s or 30s or 60s, doesn't really make a difference. They get to a certain age without ever having needed to speak a foreign language, which is definitely not the case for your students because all of us non-native English speakers, if we want to get somewhere in life, we have to learn English. But that's not the case for English natives. So very often they are, even if they would have clear intentions, which for me, it's the first thing I do every single time. It's the first workshop in the French Fluency Accelerator. Whenever I get a new one-on-one client, it's the first thing. It's what do you want to do with it? But even when they have that clearly defined, it doesn't necessarily help them know which resources to use because they don't know what a good resource is. So I actually have a full workshop in the French Fluency Accelerator. I believe it's the second one. So first thing, where you want to go. Second thing is what you use to go there. And those are the resources. And it's like 90 minutes of explaining how to pick a book, how to pick a YouTube channel, and so on. And the gist is that you always have two criteria to choose a resource. It's that one, you need to like it. This is absolutely,
I totally agree. Yeah,
so absolutely critical. And definitely, generally, if you like it, it's also because it's relevant to you. So either it's related to your hobbies or your profession. If you need to speak French or speak any language that you're learning for your work, then you're going to like it. Of course, I mean, if you're a nurse and it's about medical stuff, I have a lot of nurses in my programs. I don't really know why. Like nurses and doctors, it's just the most represented profession. Also, perhaps because of Africa and people who go volunteering there.
True.
So, but I do have a lot of people in the medical field. And so obviously if, or it's a series that happens in a hospital or things like that, it will teach you the kind of things that you need to learn. And also you will be interested in it because it's your field, right? So that's the first criteria. You need to like it. And the second is that it needs to teach you things. So typically it needs to be just hard enough that you don't understand everything, but not so hard that you don't understand anything.
Yeah.
I often say, because people tend to under-evaluate how much they understand. I have this big thing on my channel and in my programs that's called the Daily French Bath. And the idea is that you need to have some French immersion around. You just need to have some French around. And you don't need to understand or pay attention to it. And because people say, but I won't understand anything. And like, that's fine. You know, rather than fighting with, no, you actually do understand, and maybe consciously you block it or whatever. I'm like, sure, don't understand anything. It doesn't matter. I just want you to listen to it. You don't even need to pay attention. It's okay. You can be cooking, you can be working out, you can even be like doing your work if that's not something that requires like to be in silence. And it's okay if you don't understand anything. And it's funny because as soon as you give them permission to not understand anything, they come back and they say, oh, I understood so much more than I thought. That's how it works.
Yeah, there's that pressure, isn't it, with a foreign language? Like, I think that's actually why something I want to work on. I still haven't done it yet. I wanted to create like a sort of guided meditation for people to listen to before they start listening to English or speaking. Do you have one? Oh, I might just copy yours. Actually,
it's for French. I'm not sure, but it's very close. It was not made by me. It was made actually by my personal hypnotherapist. And because I make a new workshop every month for the members of the French Fluency Accelerator. And every month they vote for the new topic they want. And based on the previous workshops, we have a list of topics that we keep rolling. And the last topic was manifesting techniques for learning French. And I thought, a great way to use your subconscious, help your subconscious, is meditation or hypnotherapy. So I asked my hypnotherapist to make a track as a bonus for my students. So that's something we have in our program, yes.
Oh, that's so cool. Okay.
And I really want to make some more. I'm not exactly trusting myself yet because I've never made a meditation track, but I think I'll get to it eventually. It doesn't look that difficult.
I don't think so. I have some links I can send you about how to do it because
I would love that.
Yeah, there's some information online. Anyway, we digress, but
digression.
Digression. But no, that is important when it comes to listening. I was just thinking about your doctors and nurses and how do you recommend that they watch Ash, the old series with Jermaine Debbouze? Probably not, because
if they like it, it's always my criteria. If you like it, do it.
I say that a lot.
For the meditation, I would just add that it does help. I mean, we've been having it only for a couple of weeks, but several students have already said that it helps them. And it made a difference. If they listen to it right before the session, I can actually see that they're more relaxed.
Wow. Okay.
So it does help. It works.
Okay. I'm definitely going to make one. It's on my to-do list. I just haven't been organized yet. But no, I totally agree with you about liking something, because I'm a bit strict about kind of like, just be careful with your resource because it has to match your goal.
Yeah.
But there is flexibility because you have to be motivated to listen to it. So it's kind of juggling those two kind of sometimes competing aspects, because some people will be like, oh, I really like watching documentaries, but then I can't understand native speakers when they talk fast in a conversation. And I'm like, you've got a mismatch between the resource type and the goal. So you can
just that you need to do both. I mean, I'm very holistic. That was kind of the topic, but I don't like to see things as separate. So there isn't like your French study and the rest of your life.
Right.
You have to like make as many links as you can. Otherwise, your brain just doesn't get it. Like your brain is like, if you go to your French class like once a week for 1 hour and you do French just there, well, for one thing, your brain will associate French to the place, and then you won't be able to do it elsewhere. But also, your brain would be like, it's not my life. It's just a thing I do once a week, and I don't know why, and it's irrelevant to the rest of the life. And I want to avoid that. So I want to make as many links as possible, which is why you want to have like as much French as you can around and on as many different topics as you're interested in. Okay. So I would definitely say watch documentaries by all means, and also listen to movies and conversations between native speakers. So you have both. And I mean, for me, how do I manage to speak English this well? I'm not a native speaker, and I have absolutely no problem. I can't remember the last time it was that I misunderstood or didn't understand something in English. And that's because every single day I take my online courses in English. I talk to people in English, just like I'm doing to you. I watch YouTube videos in English. It's part of your life. If you want to speak the language properly, it has to be part of your life. No way around it.
You have to have daily contact. Yes, I agree. And I see that with languages that I've kind of dropped or kind of don't really bother with anymore. It's obviously harder because you're not in touch with it.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Just to come back to something you mentioned earlier, so you talk a lot about the 80-20 rule, and I think this is a really, really interesting concept. And the kind of the way I apply it in English listening is what I tell people is that if they can understand 80% of what they hear, they can probably turn off the subtitles because they'll catch the remaining 20% with other stuff. So, and there's lots of ways you can apply it like this. So how do you apply it in language learning and listening and things like this? Like, how does it work for you?
It's mostly in terms of the content and the vocabulary.
Right.
A lot of another issue we have with classroom approach and things that are not targeted to your personal goals is that a lot of it is just irrelevant. And so you can safely trash it, and that can be up to 80% easily. I mean, that depends a bit from, like what are your goals and what class you go to and so on. But if it's not targeting what you really need, and most of the time it just isn't, because it's like in terms of marketing, it's not even possible to market a group class with the kind of things that every person needs. It's just like, let's not get into that because that could get very complex, but it does not make sense for people who create content to target on purpose the learners who want to learn a particular thing just because they have many different goals and many different professions. So it's for you to choose this content and to be very, very selective with the words. So, and it gets way worse than the 80-20, if you will, because the French language is roughly 80,000 or 100,000 words, depending on whether you count verb conjugations to be specific words or not.
Okay.
And some natives, in their active vocabulary, the words that they use, there are scientists who have counted that, some natives use as little as 500.
Oh yeah, that doesn't surprise me. I've heard 1,000 to 2,000 cited for like conversation in English, but I'm sure
that would be that would be a native that has already some education.
Yeah.
Some like the natives with the smallest amount of word is 500. And B1, the level B1, which is the threshold level where you are believed to be able to have a conversation, is 1,000 words. So that means that if you get to level B1, by like the EU standard, you already have twice as many words in your active vocabulary than the worst natives have.
Okay.
So it's not about how many words you know, it just isn't. Stop cramming words in your head. You have to learn the words that are relevant.
Okay, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, I think this is a big thing. And this really applies to listening, especially because it's the words that you already know, the words that you learned on day one of your French classes, your English classes, that often are the most difficult to catch because they're the fuzziest, they're the unclearest words. So in a way, you're always kind of trying to figure out the words you already know and like hearing them in different contexts. It's the strangest thing because everyone is always like, well, if I knew 10,000 words, I would understand everything. And yeah,
it depends on which 10,000 words you know. And actually, I would add to that there is I stumbled upon a horrible way to do this wrong. So I want to put a caveat for the people listening because I found a list. I don't understand how they came up with that, the people who made that, because it was total nonsense.
Right.
And they were like, learn these 100 words and understand 50% of every French text. And it was like, of course it can't work. But I was like, okay, I have to check that out because they're not putting that randomly. There's got to be some backstory. So I checked out and the words are le, de, a, all the small grammar words which we use so many times. And true, it's probably true. I haven't made the count myself, but I believe them that those 100 words make up 50% of French words. Yeah. However, they carry hardly any meaning. If you wouldn't know any of these words, you would still probably be able to understand the text if you know the others.
Exactly, yeah. And you can almost you can communicate without grammar words if you have vocab words.
Yes, you can.
You can just say words for objects even if you don't have the grammar to put them together and communicate more meaning than you could if you said la, a, de.
Yes, so frequency list cannot help you with French. I believe with some other languages, perhaps like Chinese, where they only have the meaningful words, they have hardly any like grammar stuff. I guess it works for a language like that, but for French, it's forget it. It's I know it's bad because you can't help, like you can't have the help of frequency lists, but or like you would really need to know how to use them to get benefit from them. But yeah, so because I said that 500 words would be enough, don't take the 500 most frequent because that won't work.
Well, it's kind of like the 500 grammar words plus the 500 content words for your domain or something.
Yeah, I mean, maybe the first 80 or 100 are just like really irrelevant, and then the next 400 are, but honestly, I haven't done this research, so I'm just speculating right now.
Okay. All right, but I think we get
it. Doesn't matter, so I mean,
yeah. Okay.
Don't use frequency lists.
Yeah, they're not really helpful. I never really look at them, to be honest. And I wouldn't probably look at them if I was approaching a language. I would probably be like, what are the phrases that I want to translate from, say, English or French to say the stuff that I need? That's the quickest.
But that is something you're thinking of because you have experience of learning a language already. I have many students who, of course, when you tell them that, they're like, oh, duh. Like, of course, like it's so obvious that it took them 20 years, you know, to hear it for the first time and to have it register. It's not obvious for people who are native English speakers who have never had to learn a language. It's only obvious for the people here. In fact, when I tell people around, I live in Vienna and I meet tons of foreigners, and most of those foreigners, they have 3 languages because they have English and German and their native language.
Right, yeah, of course.
When I tell them about my work and the kind of advice that I give, they're like, but that's, they say in French, c'est enfoncer des portes ouvertes. It's like bursting an open door, bursting through an open door. And yeah, no, it's not, because it is for us, because we have the practice of learning languages and we know that because we've done it before. But for English natives, when it's their second language and they're adults, it's not obvious at all.
Okay, that's interesting. That gives me a new perspective because I'm working with people who are learning English, so obviously their native language is something else, although that doesn't mean that the way they were taught at school was necessarily, you know, useful.
It was taught.
At least it was taught, and they've been experimenting and figuring things out themselves. Yeah. Well, native speakers are supposed to learn. English native speakers are supposed to learn languages at school, and it's very often French. But like I was saying in our other video, I think there's issues with like it's not something that's valued. It's not something like nobody's encouraging you to do it. Like it's really quite amazing. There was nothing in my upbringing that suggested I would move to France and live in France and learn to speak fluent French. Like nothing.
Yeah.
So I was just very lucky that it worked out for me. But I'm sure a lot of people must get discouraged because there's just nobody. There's no role models. There's nobody encouraging you. There's no, you know, like it's it's hard in a way if you're an English native speaker. So
it is.
Yeah.
I mean, even if, like for me, with learning German, so in France, you have to study 2 living languages, 2 modern languages at school. And as English was my first, and as my second, my mother picked Spanish. Because for one thing, she hated German, and the second reason was that German is useless, and I will never use it in my life. After 10 years in German-speaking countries, I'm like, yeah, that was probably wrong.
Yeah, maybe not the best.
She couldn't know.
Yeah, she could. You can't know. Although I always sort of think because we are, you know, you're from Dijon and I'm from Besançon, which is not far. I'm always kind of like, well, we're so close to Germany, it kind of makes sense to Germany and to Switzerland. It maybe makes more sense to learn German, but I mean, plenty of people never go to Germany, even if it's just 2 hours drive from here. I mean, you could go for the day. And certainly when I've been to Germany, the southwestern part, lots of people don't speak English. I had to use basic German from school to communicate. So, you know, it's maybe more useful than people realize.
It definitely is for me.
Okay, cool. Yeah, you're a good example. Okay, anything else you want to add about holistic learning, about some of the concepts you discussed, or have we covered it?
No, I think we have covered everything. Maybe I can show this thing, which is a worksheet that I use with my students. Okay, because I think it's very convenient. I also have it on my channel. If you want, we can link it in the description below this video.
Awesome.
It's about French, but of course you can use it for another language. The process is the same. And it helps you really define what is fluency for you, what is the goals that you want to achieve, so your intentionality, as we were speaking. And then it helps you make a list of the things you want to learn. And this is a system that's to track your progress. Okay. So that allows you to track your progress as you are learning with you're going for your goals, for the things you really want to learn. And you know how far you are, because the last column represents fluency, right? So you have to reevaluate yourself every month.
Wow, okay.
And it's something I created in 2017. And I've been using it with my students, with every single one of my students ever since. It's also the backbone of my French Fluency Accelerator program. And it's really, really useful to have a way to just know where you're going with your language. So if you want to have that, you can get it. It's absolutely free. So
awesome.
Yeah,
I will definitely link to that. Wherever this is, there will be a link to it underneath it. I love the fact...
FrenchFluency.net/worksheet.
Okay. I love the fact that it's laminated. I'm just fascinated by
if you get it, it's a PDF, but it's laminated for me because I always show it to everyone all the time. So
no, but that's really, yeah, because my things that I print out get really grubby because they're not laminated or anything. Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Angel. So I'll link to everything under this. If it's on the blog, if it's on YouTube, it doesn't matter. There will be links. So FrenchFluency.net to find you. Anywhere else we can find you?
You can find me on YouTube. My channel is currently called Learn French with Angel Prétot. I'm considering changing it to Angel Prétot, the French coach. But if you type Angel Prétot, that's with a T at the end, you will find me. And we can also just link me, maybe put a card up here in the video or link it in the description.
Yeah, I feel like I should be pointing in all directions like people.
Yeah, well, we don't know where that is after.
Yeah, we don't know where it is. Just...
in the top right corner, there will be some cards. And yeah, that's it. You can find me also on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, and all that. But once you're on my YouTube channel, you will find all the links, LinkedIn, and all that. So yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Angel.
Thank you for having me. That was awesome.
Okay. See you.
See you, Cara.